morning, good afternoon, and good evening based on your location. And a pleasure welcome to a radio TV. This is a US-based internet radio with focus on Liberia. Today, we are broadcasting from Cavalla. Grand Cavalla is a town, in fact, a historical town located in Maryland County, particularly in Harper District. So this is the partial view of the town. You got other houses here beyond the coconut trees. And where you are looking is the Atlantic Ocean right behind the coconuts you are seeing. So this is one of the, historical churches in the Republic of Liberia. But we have Mr. Henry Dioh Woart, who will provide us some historicity about Cavalla. So, Mr. Woart, you are welcome.
Thank you.
Can you tell us a bit about Cavalla?
Well, I have much. It will not be sufficient.
All right.
Because I know brevity is at the
You
expense
can leave it so
of
small.
clarity.
You can leave it so small.
If you want to be brief, sometimes it all can be clear.
All right.
But Cavalla is a part of the global kingdom located in southeastern Liberia. It's a part of the Harper district, which stretches now from what is Fishtown, the Chorus River, to the Cavalla River in Harper district. As a matter of a settlement, Cavalla was settled here in the late 1800s. And when we say 1800, we mean 1700 plus. The best of the history we have that we came here for this settlement in the year 1790, 1794, thereabout. Now these people come from many other places. First of all, the settlement of Cavalla was established and founded by people from the global, as we call them, people, and in that global was Fishtown, Rocktown, Big Town. Those were the global people who came to settle the place. In addition to that, other people came from a place we call Little Rebel, which was part of the global at the time. And another group came from Dioh Woart. In addition to that, we met people here who were Didas, who are currently in Cote d'Ivoire.
All right.
So these are the 5 groups of people: the global, the Dioh Woart, the Little Rebel, people from Dida, and people we met here. They founded Cavalla. What prompted the founding of the Cavalla settlement was a broker, a slave broker by the name of Blanche Dale of the Binton family. He was a slave broker in those days in Rocktown and among the global. If you commit a crime and you are found guilty, the payment for settling that crime was a slave. You have to produce a human being. And what role that I played there was to take the slave to the Portuguese slave traders, and they would give them goods that they would use to enjoy themselves for the settlement of that crime. In the 1790s, a thing I call like that, and the family was asked to produce a slave, a human being, to be sold as a slave. And they all agreed, and they gave the slave to Dada. So when they see a vessel, they will make fire to let the vessel know that there's a village here. And when they see the smoke, when they throw anger, then if you have anything to sell, you can. So Dada went on board one of these slave ships to sell this slave. And While he was there, they used him also as a navigational guide. When they pass Racktown, they want to go to Taboo, he will guide them until they are returning, going back to Portugal before they will put him down. So while they were gone, the people in the village knew yes, he will come, but then they began to think. And there was a man in Racktown of the Nyambo family called Goyua. And it was a Nyambo person they had sold. So Goyua suggested to the town people, it seemed not to be good that we will be selling human beings to settle death. Can we find another means? Because peradventure, time will come. You don't have a son. You don't have a slave. Yourself will be so. So after considering them that way, the town people agree. Instead of saying, well, let's stop here. Next time we'll collect something. They said, yes, beginning from now. In fact, the slave that they carry, the goods will be given back to the family. And let the family give us a cow. So a cow was used in place of the slave. So the town people took the cow. Instead of telling the family when that brings the proceeds, we will give it to you. They told that in a way, they told the Nyambo family, when that brings the goods, you can go and collect it. So on arrival, the little work he did as a navigational guy or interpreter or what it might be, it gave him a token for his own service plus the proceeds for the slave. And from him by the people who had the slave. So he got disappointed. He said they had betrayed him. Suppose the people had killed him. So that's why he decided to leave Raptor. So in 1790, 94, thereabout, he went to other people first. It's not in Raptown, they're not in Middletown, they're not in Fishtown. There's no part of that. They were found in Big Town. So he went there, and Judy and the other people I talk about joined him and they settled this place. That's how came they settled here. While they were here, they met the Didas and they joined them. There's a family here called Yabo. They're not from Boko. They are Didas. They were here. And people from Dogrubo, later on for their own reason and safety, they came and joined them. And those people who came from Dogrubo are the people we call the Tiabo. That's the Morgan family.
You mean the Dorobo from Callaway?
The Dogrubo from Callaway.
All right.
Yes, they came from the Dogrubo from Callaway. And they are in this village, they call them Tiabo. They are the Morgans. Then people also came from Little Rebel. Later on, came from Little Rebel for some other reasons, and they were seeking safety. They came to Cavalla. That's a quarter we call Gugo. They are from Little Rebel. So these are the people who founded Cavalla.
So the slave broker you talk about, was he a white man or he was a black man?
The broker in a blind shade that was of the quarter in Racktown called Talabo. Talabo, that's a Benton. Talabo is a big clan, or big family as we call it, but the household of the Benton. You probably may have heard of David Benton, who signed the JJ. Yes, he's a member of that clan. The Benton family, they got Bidare as another clan of that Talabo. They have Williams there in Racktown, but in Racktown, Dada was a member. In Amblanche, Dada was a member of the Benton family, which is a part of the Talabo clan.
Right.
Yes. So he was not a white man.
Was he a returned slave?
No, he was an indigenous man. He was an indigenous. In those days, the slave traders had their own tactics. If they bring goods that you want, you have to have a slave in your goods to be given a weapon. If you don't want to sell a slave, you will get no weapon. Your neighbor who has a slave will be given the weapon. So probably he will wage war against you and capture your people as slaves. And that's how they were doing it. But that was a member of Black Town from the quarter we call the Talabo, and the client of that quarter or the household of that quarter called Vinton. They call them flower. They got Nawaro, they got flower, but that was a flower indigenous Bractonian.
So in other areas, people can get quarters like this is the family that brought this entire global kingdom, or this is the family that became originally the owners of this town. Are there any families here, particularly who the priests who position go to as indigenous,
Yes.
who were involved with the establishment of Cavalla?
Yes, that tradition is still existing. The Talabo family that I told you about and the household of the Binton have the royalty of the Wuraba. The word Wuraba means father of the town. To this day, the Talabi is the Wuraba, father of the town.
Yeah.
For example, the high priest belongs to the quarter here we call Yirabo. And not all the Yirabo, they have Kushner and they have Brian. But the high priest position belongs to the Brian. We have also here the Yiba Dioh, who is the field marshal when they go to battle. That position belongs also to the Talabo, but to the Nawarebo group, not the flower. They got Tibawa, who is the second in command in battle, who we call Tibawa. It's another field marshal. That position belongs to the Glebo. Those are hereditary positions. They are not elected positions. So they give us a person who will represent. Yes. So there are quarters here that traditionally have certain positions.
Tell us now why, like you spoke of the Yirabo, they have in the traditionally in general they are called Yirabo, but then their names as it relates to civilization they have different names.
Well, that's another story. Civilization came in, and because of difficulties, well, first of all, you go to Harper or in Liberia, there are people who try to get Western names. Sometimes if you're reared by somebody,
like me now, like me who got Western names.
All right, they got their Western name from the people who brought them up, or from the people with whom they work in civilization. So it depends if your client or your quarter has a man who probably may have worked with Wishner, you will come with a Wishner name. If you go into a school, you will take the Wishner name. If you have a person who worked with the William, you will take the William name. So we got traditional names and Western names. And unfortunately, there came a time if you have to be baptized, they can baptize you with traditional names. They got to find something like St. John, St. Peter, as if to say God did not want to accept tradition. It's changing now, but that's how this thing came about.
So he can leave the song. So in the Grebo area, because like a section of the Grebo area might have a traditional town like the Grebo people are. Apart from Cavalla, is there any traditional town that the people take in, hold in high respect? Like as you are saying, where the royal family is, probably if general traditional practices are being done, they will say, look, let's go to Cavalla because that's the biggest town.
Yes. You may have focused your camera on the village called Cavalla. It is a traditional village.
All right.
In that town, the rule of Christianity does not hold there. They do not observe Sabbath. But asking about traditional town, yes, all of the so-called global towns, which is Fishtown, Middletown, Rocktown, Benelu, Leje, which is Greyway, Half Greyway, Cavalla, Wateke, Kablake, they have traditional families. And those quarters, you cannot come from another quarter and just arbitrarily, because there's a vacancy of land there, to come from Dida we call Yabo,
Mhm.
and go to the Tarabo and build your house. You see, so they are sitting on shrine. Kobeka O'Neill, all of the porters are sitting on family shrine. So when they call the dead, you're not belonging there. The blessing will come to members of the family. So to just abandon your family shrine
Mhm.
and move to another place is another thing to think about. That's why the towns are not growing. That's one reason why the towns are not growing. Until you move from that shrine site and move into a place that you want to develop, progressive development can be debilitated. That is slow. So yes, all traditional global towns that we are speaking about,
Mhm.
I'm talking about global towns.
Yeah.
Somebody will speak about other towns which do not follow tradition now. But the global tradition is observed in Harper District, from Fishtown to Cavalla.
All right.
Somebody referred to Rocktown as one of the historic towns that which the global people who in high esteem.
You want to know why?
Yeah.
Yes. Well, we'll try to compare equals with equals. When we talk about seniority,
Mhm.
you go back to the history and of religion, for example. Jacob of those twins was not considered the senior. Esau was the senior. According to their tradition, if twins are born, the person who sees the light first is the person we consider as a child.
Yeah.
The person who comes last, we say you put a child in front. So the man who comes to see the light, secondly, according to that tradition, is the senior. But when they get into real life, it doesn't work that way. Otherwise, Jacob would never have been considered as the inheritor of the blessing. So yes, Racktown, when the global came here in 1701, they landed first at the Cape, near the lighthouse. There where the global, at that time were not global, they were called bubble.
Mhm.
There where they landed first. But they did not establish a town. You know, they did very trying to start a settlement. Then the Muniawe from Cote d'Ivoire, with whom they were residing, pursued them because they stole women, they stole canoes. And so the global ran away. In the interim, while they were trying to settle, a man called Shemamle of the Uriabo family.
Mhm.
Here in this town, the Uriabo are called Wilson. Maybe in other places, Fish Town, um, Middletown, they are there. But the Uriabo, man called Shemamle, he saw the place that we now call Racktown. So he left Duripo with part of the people, and he took a part of the people to what we call Take. Take means a viewpoint. We sit here and look on at the ocean. So while they were there, trying to put themselves together to start a settlement, the Muniawe attacked them. So when they attacked them, the people in big town that were in at the Cape
Mhm.
with Duripo, they felt that they could now fight these people. So they chased and went to Racktown, where they met Simabegre and other members of the Bopo that time. So they all decided they couldn't fight for land that they have not claimed by strength. So they all ran away in 1701 to Garaway. And they stayed there some time until 1704. When they decided to return, and the oracles and the medicine they brought to set up a new town,
Mhm.
it did not reach to the Cape. It stopped to Racktown. And so Racktown became the first permanent village. Yes, they landed at the Cape,
Mhm.
but they did nothing there to settle a town.
They keep in Harper.
It happened. You understand? So from Racktown in 1704, Racktown was built. In 1705, another man of the Global family, I think, called Duripo, was asked to bring the people to Puruke. coming toward where they landed.
Mhm.
So they settled in Puruke. These two towns are the first permanent towns of the global on the Atlantic coast. Now, the controversy is whether Esau is the oldest or Jacob. Yes. So one side claims that the place they landed first could be the senior. And I'm not fighting about that. My role is not to judge, it's to tell you what has happened.
All right.
Yes. Otherwise, they would have settled many places. But they left and settled in Rocktown on real settlement, right? They came to Rocktown. That's where they buried their first shrine. Stayed there. It was from there after 1704.
Mhm.
In 1705, that another party with good understanding decided they would come advance to Harper. And they didn't cross the river the first, then they made Puruke. It is from Puruke that all the so-called global on the Harper district and Rocktown come. The group that came from Rocktown near a creek there called Kure, meaning a village, a lake or creek that opens periodically. Kure means open up. You open up a river, you can hear the lake shepherd. Neither Kure means to rake open. So people settling in Rocktown, living by that river that rake open periodically, are called Kure Mwewe. Now, the people who came to Puruke came to Hoffman River. And in the language of the Boko at the time, the word marsh, M-A-R-S-H, was Nyuma, the swampy around the river. There's no high place besides Jiritewelu where you can land easily without stepping into the mud. So they call it Nyuma Nyuma. That's what the Nyuma name is about. So all the people who came from Puruke near Nyuma are called the Nyuma. It has nothing to do with controversy.
And the other side is called
The Kuremonwe
yeah.
are from Rocktown.
Okay.
That's Fishtown, Middletown, Rocktown except Cavalla. They come from Rocktown. Big Town, Whole Greenway and all its suburbs, Kablake and Wateke, they are originally from Puruke. You understand?
Yeah.
And in Puruke, it was around the Nimo. So they are the Nimo people. So that's how it works.
So the person who discovered Cavalla, how did they discover this town? Was he a hunter that came and maybe came across this area to say, look, there is a need to settle here before all of his friends knew?
That's good. In 1701 or thereabout, there was a man here who had come. He was not a bubble, who later on became global. He was from
leave it so small.
The area of Berebi. He was a man of the Muniawe tribe. They call him Kulewale. He was living here and probably was a slave dealer. And the dealer man, the Cavalla people met here, they call him Siaule Kra. Siaule, not Siaule Kra. Siaule. He was also here. When you come into Cavalla on the P there, before you get to a whole Great Junction, he had a village there. This Siaule and Kulewale used to sell the black white people who were hunters gatherer in this settlement. That is, they follow the crab, they follow the animal, they follow the plum, or whatever were here. When they eat it and they deplete it, they move. They didn't have settlement. But Kulewale was living there. And he and Sianwule were selling the black white around here. One day, Kulewale went to the ship and sold one of the black whites. He used to carry them. He said that big man know the canoe. So he was sit down in the sea to guide the canoe. He put the man, said, let's go fishing. He carried the man to the ship. They climb in the ship. They gave him a big pot of rice. While he eating it there, they negotiating for his sale. And the captain will give him boost. He comes back without that man. So one day, Dioh Woart came, and we are told he was attacked by the blowers. You understand?
Mhm.
Dioh Woart was from Muniawe, who are now living in San Pedro, Beribi around there.
Yeah.
The Muniawe. They are now called Urienwe. So he could not stand it. So he fled. He left this area and went. Girl was there.
Mhm.
They say, stop here. He said, no, I'm going to Rocktown. So he went to Rocktown. In the 1790s, when Dada was seeking for a place to settle, it was Dioh Woart who gathered him here. So Dada was not a hunter. Dioh Woart was a man from Biribi, was a Muniawe man. Eh?
Mhm.
He said, oh, I had a place that I was living, but the people drove me out of there. We can go back there. So it was that Dioh Woart who brought him here. Eventually now, we are trying to count them as members of the Branded family.
Mhm.
If you look over there, if you show your camera there,
Yeah.
you see that rock across behind those coconut trees?
Yeah.
That's what we call Bedelu. There's a village there, you see behind there, you see a zinc house.
Mhm.
They call it Dorolu. That's where Dioh Woart was living. That's where he brought that first. Because they burned that settlement,
Mhm.
when they came, he told that, let's build here. That I said, this place has been burned. I cannot build on ashes of a village that has been attacked and burned.
Mhm.
We built a new town. And he said, I'm in Urairare Poma. That's why the Cavalla first settlement is Urairare, where the Yoruba live. So, know that I was not a hunter.
So meaning that behind those coconut trees.
Behind the coconut tree, there's a town, which
Yeah.
we will name later.
Okay.
That has this meaning. That I came and said he cannot build enough ashes.
Mhm.
We build a fresh town. You see that cotton tree?
Yeah.
It's standing in a place we now call Roirale. We not build on the old town. We build a new town.
Mhm.
So Roirale was the first real settlement of the Cavalla people.
So does that mean the people in some part of La Côte d'Ivoire and also Maryland County, they are interrelated?
Quite interrelated. Quite interrelated. The Irago family that is in big town, the man who migrated with them here to Cavalla came because he had a place here. They attacked him too, and he fled and went to big town.
Mm.
Eh?
Mm-hmm.
Nyamle Hyanu was his name. From Biribi. From Biribi.
Okay.
In the Muniawe area. The Yidabo from Yitabo.
Okay.
Some histories say that Kwame Nkrumah has his roots there. His father was from there. His mother went to Gold Coast. I mean, his father was from there, but his mother was in Gold Coast. And that's where he became a Ghanaian. But his background is from that Yitabo.
Okay.
So, yes, they are interrelated. There are quarters here that we have that are related to quarters in La Côte d'Ivoire. There are quarters here that are related to quarters in Grand Cru because some of the people passed what we call Seklepo.
Fine. That's why
When they were coming,
Mhm.
the people who left behind, when they came, people landed
the
here.
princess.
Yes, they did not see the people who landed here. Perhaps by that time they had run away. Eh? 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 They ran away and they were in Garaway. So they didn't see them. So they passed with their canoe. And then when we call them secret, well, they left behind. And when they're passing with their sail and canoe, we say, me, yonder. Me na, me, no, nare, me.
Yeah, beyond.
Yes, in the dark. So yes, there are quarters here that are related to quarters in Grand Cru as well as in Côte d'Ivoire.
So there was a time after all of this and the missionary came and they have decided to select Cavalla as one of the areas where you have one of the oldest churches in the Republic of Liberia, which we'll view later. Can you tell us how Cavalla selection was like?
Okay, it has its own history. There were three factors that led to the coming of the missionaries.
Mm.
Number one, you will remember in American history, in 1776,
Mhm.
when the British or the English and the American were fighting the war of independence. There were slaves in America, and the British or the English promised those slaves, join us. If we fight and win the war, we'll free all of you. You probably may have heard about John Kazet. John Kazet was a son of a Panama chief from Sherbrooke. He was kidnapped and sold in Charleston. So he was there. When they fought the war, unfortunately, the English did not win the war, right? When they were retreating, they did not take the slaves who fought with them to England. They took them to a place in Canada called Nova Scotia, and they left them there. So while they were there, the Canadian citizens did not welcome the idea of resettling slaves in their community. And so the English decided in 1787, 1787, mind you, the war was fought in 1776. The British, the King of England, the royalty of England decided that they would relocate those people to another place. And that's how they came with the aid, the help of Sherbrooke, of John Kazet, who had been living in Sherbrooke but came back as a former slave, led them to Sherbrooke. And that's how the British got hold of Sherbrooke. And they settled there and built a settlement called Freetown for the free slaves. That's where the Freetown name came from. So when the church, the Anglican...
That is a Freetown in Sierra Leone.
Yes. When the Anglican church decided to expand, to spread its doctrine to Africa, the first place, one of the first places was Freetown. You understand? So, which is in Sierra Leone. They came to Freetown, but the British, Caucasian, who were white people, could not withstand the malaria and other diseases that were in Freetown. So the church did not survive well. So in the 1816 or thereabout, when the Church of England heard about the American Colonization Society founding a place in Africa, they wrote a letter. The Anglican Church in England wrote a letter to the church in America, then called the Episcopal Church, which is a branch of the Anglican, to see if they could include people who they were sending to Africa. It would include some pious and religious people who will help them to spread the church doctrine. So they worked out with the state of Maryland and the ACS, American Colonization Society, and they began to select people. The state of Maryland in America, 3 of the vice presidents of the ACS were from Maryland. And the state of Maryland pledged a donation of $1,000 per year towards the ACS effort. But when it came time to select people for bringing them to Africa, of the 86 that came on the first vessel, only 2 Marylanders were selected. So Maryland Fair, at that time, it had a big slave population. And that population, about 30% of it accounted for slaves or free slaves. When will we get rid of these 30%? The law in Maryland was once a slave, forever a slave. So they were not freeing people. You understand? When will we get rid of all these people? We need to organize our own colony. That's how the state of Maryland was organized. Now, in Monrovia, there was a gentleman who was part of the ACS effort called James Thompson. And he was there working. And there were some of those people who were repatriated to Monrovia who were Episcopalian, who had the Anglican doctrine, but they did not have clergy. The Episcopal Church run on ordained ministry. Not anybody want prayer meeting, prayer band, no. So those people who were in Monrovia did not have an ordained minister who was an Anglican or an Episcopalian.
Okay.
So with the help of James Thompson, a letter was given to James Hall, who came to found the state of Maryland. And they later went back and they were taken to the Board of Foreign Mission to find a situation. So in 1823, a place called Virginia Theological Seminary was organized to train people for overseas service. It was in that training, and at that time, the messages, I will take you to the graveyard, the messages coming from Africa were not attractive. When you go 2-3 years, you die from malaria. So nobody wants to come. Nobody wanted to come. So in 1835, 3 of the graduates of Virginia Theological Seminary decided to devote their life to the work in Liberia. One of them was Thomas Savage. Another one was Lancelot Minor. His grave is in that cemetery. And another one was John Payne. Payne came with his wife Anna. So they decided, duck or no dinner, they will come to spread the gospel in Africa, particularly in Liberia and specifically in Maryland. So once they were leaving Cavalla, now Payne, not Payne, James Hall, James Thompson were already now working with Dr. Hall as his secretary. It was Hall who founded Maryland. So he came and was living in Maryland. So the man who wrote a letter asking for somebody to help parish their church is in Maryland. Go to Maryland. They gave them 4 instructions, I think, or 5. But one was go and try to survey the Cavalla River as far as 100 miles. And the reason of your survey is to ascertain the character of the people and their reaction to religion. 2, study their dialect, and with the hope that eventually it will be reduced into writing. 3, establish a high school, and that high school should be bringing natives who will be trained and bring their brothers onto the gospel. And finally, your work should be among the people. And among those people, form a visible church of Christ that will worship according to the ordinance of the Anglican Church. And that is the visible church. That is why they came here. They were given specific information and instruction. Because people from America, even though they may not have been Christian, they heard about Christianity. But the people who selling human beings, who do not know about God or do not know about human beings, will include the descendant of Daddy, who was selling slaves. So go to that Cavalla. They might be selling people there yet. Go there and teach these people that human being is not a piece of property to be sold. It's somebody made in the image of God. And that's why they selected Cavalla. Bishop Payne in 1854 gave a speech, a copy of which is around. And he said the reason Cavalla was selected was it was sandwiched among many other tribes. And the Cavalla River was, of that matter at that time, a super highway. You could ride on the Cavalla River in Kino and go to Wevo. And that's why he did and went as far as Nitelu, where they got a teacher training college now. Yeah. By the time he came here 1836, 37, but by the time he left in 1868, the church had been established as far as Nitelu, where they got our school. Bolen Mission, if you go to Weber Arts, there's a place there called Bolen Mission. He established it. So that's why Cavalla was selected with this missionary thing. Now, when they came here, they built a church and they built a school. And they tried to introduce the global literacy. They were here where the global literacy was introduced. They built a school here called Epiphany Hall. Besides this Epiphany Church, there was a Episcopal Hall. And the foundation, the remnant of the foundation is still there. Stay there. But, and that school grew up to the college level in 1868 with the help of a man called Hoffman, C.C. Hoffman. C.C. Hoffman was a settler also, but he came here and was working, and a man called John Gobley Auer, a German priest who had been a Lutheran in Gold Coast,
Mhm.
joined Hoffman to come here to join the Episcopal Church. You understand that?
Yeah.
So as a reward to Hoffman who brought him, he started a school here and named it after like you say, at the college in the university, Tottenham University, we have Elizabeth Russell College, right?
Yeah.
So at Hoffman Institute, at Epiphany Hall,
Mhm.
which was a school, he created Hoffman Institute, which was a college level.
Mhm.
Classical education, Latin, Greek, English, of the best that you can still find. Eh? So that's where they had a college. There are people like some ethnic people, Judy Bryant, father, C.G. Bryant, he quarter right there. He got educated here. Nadisha Bryant got educated. Gibson, G.W. Gibson,
Yeah.
he came here as an educator, as a student. Uh, Ferguson, Simon David Ferguson, came here when he was 6 years or 10 years old, and he lived with Bishop Payne, was educated here solely, and was ordained priest of the church. So as things will happen, which is not a pleasant thing to talk about, there was a feeling that the government could not read the language of their indigenous people. So there came a time in the 1850s when Maryland had problem with the settlers, with the indigenous people. They claimed that it was that literacy that the global counted on for their supremacy. So they declared it a crime to be in possession of global material. They were burned. There was a house here, Matthew Perry.
Yeah.
There was a big house there. This thing came later. But Matthew Perry came here to Bishop Payne and collected him. And Bishop Payne gave him some of the material. If you go to the Virginia Theological Seminary, there's a library there called John Payne Library at Virginia Theological Seminary. 152 cartoons of something like 20 kilos were taken from their ground and shipped to America. And they formed the crust of the document of the state of Maryland or the establishment of the Episcopal Church on the American side. Of course, there's another history of the Episcopal Church in Liberia, which is the Liberian history written by Eudon. You understand? Which focuses on Jim Thompson, that he was the founder. But the actual work of the missionary overseas began in 1836. You understand me? When these three men who came from Virginia Theological Seminary, Payne, Minor, and Savage, came to Africa and decided, based on the instruction they were given, to settle in Cavalla.
So before we go further, I think we have to do a display of the church.
Yeah.
Then we can tell how it was constructed, what are those materials used for the construction, and the interaction with those missionaries and the indigenous people.
Right.
I think we can walk to the church more.
You're welcome.
So this is the Episcopal Church here in Cavalla, Grand Cavalla in Maryland County. And this is one of the oldest churches in the Republic, right?
As a structure,
Yeah.
the oldest standing church. We're talking about the oldest church. The word church.
The oldest standing churches.
Yes.
All right.
Yes. The church
So
has,
can we go around small to see,
yeah,
let the people know what's particularly the churches, because okay, so
this structure, the foundation of this structure was laid on March 21, 1851.
wow. So let just let the people view it,
Yeah.
and then we talk about it.
The
Talk
foundation
about it
here
small.
as a structure, but the congregation, as you will probably recollect, the congregation was started 14 years before this structure was built.
Wow.
So there was small palava house here, of which you have photographs, where they were worshiping before that building was constructed. So in terms of the congregation, the congregation was 14 years older than the structure here.
Wow.
And this church, the structure, as they managed, is the oldest standing church structure. There were churches that were built before this, but the St. Mark broke down. In Monrovia, Baptist is there as a church. The older congregation in the Republic of Liberia will probably be the Baptist, as stand corrected. But the Covenant Baptist Church will find it on the first ship. So that is a congregation. But in terms of structures, standing structures, as it was, the foundation of this church was laid on March 21, 1851. That was 14 years past. They were worshiping here before the structure was built.
So many persons normally wonder, especially with the materials constructed along with this church, and I want to get close to see. So these are all, stones, and people are wondering how this church was constructed.
Yes, regarding the materials, it could be by a missing coincidence. But when I went to Virginia to Loyola Seminary, I saw houses similar to this. But these rocks, I have my very strong doubt that they were imported. They collected here.
Yeah.
There's a big source of rocks. You might have time to go and see it. I remember reading a story where a man went there and took rocks, and the town people called him and wanted to punish him for selling their secret rocks. But somebody rocks came from here. These are
that which I also believe.
Yeah, these are burnt bricks. These bricks may have come here from somewhere at the time, or may have been made here. But these are dead bricks.
All right.
That is burnt. So the material and the workmanship was part of the program of the Virginia Theological Seminary instruction. The mission, the Episcopal Church foreign mission. So all of these were done right here. These rocks, I've tried to go into the bush to find a hole where these rocks were dug. But there's plenty of rocks there to see. You go there, you see some of these. Some of these are sedimentary rocks. That is mean sandy rocks. Some of them are igneous rocks, like they came from under heat. So it's separate. But what they used to mend these rocks were limestone. Limestone, and they know how they did it. Limestone consists of oyster material, clam material. That's what they use to cement it together here. And when you go to where I told you in Virginia, you find houses like this. So they built a house according to this.
All
I
right.
heard stories that in Gold Coast there's a place called Amina, the British or the Portuguese or whoever, they imported material. But these things were basically collected.
So let's just turn around and see what up. So this is one of the oldest standing churches in Liberia, just as he said. And so I believe there might be a need for the changing of the roof as you are seeing it. And I don't know whether you can find those engineers around who may be able to help in the process. So this harness was recently added. Yeah.
Was a well.
Okay.
Originally was a well where the missionary used to get water. This harness you see attached in 2006.
Wow.
So we had a convention, and we have, because in there they didn't have an office for the priest, they didn't have a bathroom, and when the convention was coming, we attached this annex
Mhm.
and put two gender sensitive facilities.
All right.
This was meant for men. There are two commodes in here,
Mhm.
and the other side here was meant for women.
All
There
right.
are also two commodes there.
Okay.
This was attached here in 2006
All right.
when the Episcopal Church of Liberia came here to celebrate. They to hold a convention here.
Okay. So I believe you might not be the right person to answer this question, but you might have had some idea about it. Do you face difficulty in, you know, de-roofing and re-roofing this building?
Yes, immense difficulties. This is not the first time this roof has been a challenge. I think in my lifetime, this is the third time it will be done.
Wow.
Um, at that time, the Cavalla, this Episcopal Church was the Cavalla Church.
Mhm.
Every Cavallian was a member. So there was a, like you say, the Church of England.
Mhm.
This was the Cavalla Church of the Epiphany. Every Cavallian was a member of this church. You probably remember if you study about the United Nations, there was a trusteeship council for all countries that were not independent at the time. But today you find it empty because all the countries are independent. When nobody had a church to worship in, this church was a church for all. But now, thank God that the gospel has spread and people have the freedom to choose, which is the gift of God,
Mhm.
the freedom of choice. Eh? So they choose to be other denomination. And so it is reducing. Here in
Okay.
this town, we have the Catholics, we have the Lutheran, we have the Baptists, huh? We have the Episcopal Church here, then we have some apostolic churches, you know.
Wow.
Yes. So there are more than 5, 6 churches here now. So if all the people were in the church, so we find it difficult to put money together as a small congregation to do this kind of work. So we are making a peace, and we hope it will be long, but we will get some result. Now, I
So
remember,
maybe there are some Cavalians in the diaspora probably watching you, or some Liberians who are resourceful watching you. What sort of support, if they had the support, to contribute to the church renovation?
by our limited knowledge, we invited students from the university who did an estimate,
All right.
and that was in 2017. So it's been many years now. And it's the money to just put the roof back, not to replace the stained glass windows,
Hmm.
not to make the door, right?
Yeah.
But the roof and that tower to repair it
Yeah.
was in the tune of 17,000 United States dollars at that time.
Yeah.
And that's the paper we carry around trying to raise money. Of course, we ourselves here are trying to manage in a bigger way how we put some money together. We have committed ourselves to providing all the wood to replace the roof.
All right.
That's what the local church is fighting to do. Now, we do not want to use asbestos, which in some quarters is not acceptable.
Yeah.
We want to use the underground roofing, which is another different form of roofing sheets that are kind of plastic, some like. And we've used them in other villages, but that's what we are trying to do. So if there's anybody anywhere, yes, people have told us. Some people are lucky and their churches were repaired, or they have the population,
Mhm.
the congregation in the area where they have a lot of them. Most of the people who are in Harper City are there to do some work. So when they go to church, they have money to pay church due.
All right.
These are widows, people who not working. So to find 20,000 United States dollars just as it is difficult. So when you ask the people in the diaspora, expect recently we met people from Canada, from America, from Cote d'Ivoire, and all over Liberia met here this recent February or something like that. And it was decided That was the last thing on the resolution. They did not highlight it, even though they have received messages that if you let the church fall, you will fall with it.
Of course.
But people are saying, I'm not an Episcopalian. Some of them are atheists. But the passion, the feeling, this is like an old lady who had many children. Even the church itself, the diocese itself.
And the church served as the origin of Christianity here in Cavalla.
Yes, in Maryland and in many parts of Liberia.
Okay.
But now, this church is old now. It's just like you go to the rubber bed and you take up the rubber sign and you establish your plantation and you forget about the nursery. And that's what is happening.
Okay.
Yes. Now, I was telling you about the Hoffman Institute.
Yeah.
Or
So it is the church that has the other facility.
Yeah, this facility was built in 2006 or completed in 2006 from money that we got from friends.
All right.
We had a friend is in Ohio, Paul Frank.
Mm.
Some talking with him, and he agreed to finance first the construction of this school.
All right.
Which was to replace this school. You see this school? This school, this foundation.
Yeah.
The rock you see there and there, going up there. You see the rock?
Mm-hmm.
That's the foundation of what was the Epiphany Hall.
Okay.
It was 3 stories. Now,
wow.
Later on in 1868, it was inaugurated as Hoffman Institute, and it began to give degrees in theology. But, you know, the political will must be there. In 1880, when the last, well, not the last, when our John Godley Howard died, a man was sent called Panic, King Bishop. These were American people. And then, I think when Panic died, there was a man called Bishop Owen. He came along. But after him, it became difficult. In fact, Payne died in 1874. Panic or whoever it was died in 1885. Between 84 and 74 and 85, there was trouble with money making. And so a gentleman by the name of Henry Fulton, not Henry, Fulton Cutting. Fulton Cutting gave some money to the new bishop who came in the person of Samuel A. Beckerson in 1885. He gave him a $500 grant, $5,000 grant to improve the work. At that time, this was the seal, SEE, that is the headquarters of the Episcopal Church in Liberia. So there were houses there where they were living. The bishop hall was there. There were 17 other frame buildings around here. So when he gave that money, it was decided that the church will relocate or reaching best known to them. So in 1885, 86, that money was used to buy what we now call percussion. It was paid for as Cottington. And there where the new Hoffman Institute, Epiphany Hall, was built to that name. Went to that spot where you now find Hoffman Percussion High School. But the first building that was there took the replica and the name of that building, Epiphany Hall.
So the Bishop Ferguson High School is an Episcopal school.
It is an Episcopal institution.
All right.
So what I'm saying, when they got that 5,000, they bought the land there and facilitated, that is, manipulated the pure mind by facilitating meetings that Maryland had been cut off to the Cavalla River. And this school, which was the only college in the country that the Episcopal Church wanted to build, should go to that place. That hadn't went to happen. And they built the Epiphany Hall there. And it became Cottington College. Robert Fulton Cotting. He was one of the people in the Episcopal Church of America. But for his appreciation that an African, a Liberian, would become a bishop, the first Liberian bishop, he gave Samuel David Ferguson, who came here when he was 10 years, I think, and went to school until he was ordained. He gave him $5,000. That's the money they used to buy that property and started the Epiphany Church, the Epiphany Hall there, which they named Cottington College. Now, Cottington College story is another story. In the 1920s, when American Depression came, money was not coming, it closed. In the 1940s, when Bishop Harris, Ravi Harris, came to rebuild it, the government appealed to the Episcopal Church that this was the only college that was coming in the country. There was no, the University of Liberia had been going what they call a Liberian college. So they begged the Episcopal Church to give them land in Banga, Bon County, that they should relocate. So the relocation process began in the 47 by 51 or so. Cottington started work. When they left from here in 1885, by 1889, Cottington there was started. So talking about the movement, this is okay, but this is where it started. This is where it started. This is where it started.
Okay. So like I guess there are some other things we can talk about, particularly the symmetry of the missionaries.
All right. Now you were just in passing talking about this building. I'm telling you, there's a man in Ohio, Akron, Ohio, called Paul Frank, and he has a foundation called the Frank Ware Mission. And the Frank Ware Mission, by some amazing work, came here. He was a member of the Covenant Committee that was monitoring the Episcopal Church movement to self-rule from the Episcopal Church of America. So coming, we appealed to him that we wanted this place to be rebuilt. He paid for this building.
The school building.
This school building.
All right.
I don't remember how much besides the backing that the diocese gave. Then he paid for this building. That's what we requested.
This one?
Yes, a school and a place for the priest to stay. Because that was a big complaint.
So
you have a place for a priest to stay.
This is a passionate.
This is a passionate.
All right.
This was opened in 2006.
All right.
2006.
What about the school?
This school was started before that. We're running it already. In the 98, 99, this school was been built, and it started before the war started to scatter everything. But these are quite recent developments.
But was there a school during the days of the missionaries?
Oh yes, I'm telling you, there was a college level education here.
In Cavalla?
In Cavalla,
prior
yes,
to the relocation at Ferguson?
Yes, prior to the relocation, up to 1885. This thing was running degree in theology.
Okay.
White man teaching black man, white man book. Here. You understand?
Okay. So we can move on to the next area. So like I was saying, when those missionaries came and decided to change the mind of the people in, preaching the word of God to them, were there some challenges in, uniting with those people? Like probably there were difficulties, or there was just smooth operation each time they suggest and the native people adhere to it?
Well, there was a dilemma. First of all, the indigenous people saw all settlers, even including the white, as settlers. And they did not read their motive correctly. The church came, as I described, with the full mandate to write the language of the people, to teach the people religion, to build a church, and to start a school. That was good to the people. But the indigenous people could not differentiate that kind of motive from the settlers' motive. So they look at the missionary also as what we call moral deprivators. They had nothing to do. They came here to take our land, take our children. So they look at the missionary as that. The missionary had challenges. There were times to put your daughter in school here, who they prime so much to get dowry. You have to pay them the dowry price for your daughter for them to come to school.
Wow.
And sometimes they come and they tell me, take the children home to get a child back, you got to provide a dash. It was not an easy thing. Besides that, this area was frequently battleground. And the missionary had to intervene. So they were not all easygoing. Sometimes they would come and break up the mission and take their children. One of those such instances happened when the government of the state of Maryland passed a law that no vessel should dock offshore of any village except to Happo. And so the growers said, if the village is near the sea, as Happo is, if you say the ship will not dock there, and they bring missionary thing, nobody will come from Cavalla to go to it from Happo. So the ship can come here. The what I call the prejudice or the misgiving was that the selling slave, that's why the ship went. That was why they capitalized on. When in fact, it was not completely true. That was a long time ago. The 1900 global people here were not selling human beings. Global abolished slavery in 1790, beginning with the story I told you from Raptown. So nobody was openly selling slaves here.
Okay.
But they claimed that for some reason that this thing should not develop here. There are history to the extent that before 1851, students were coming from here. 3 students came from this school and went to study theology at Virginia Theological Seminary. And they graduated from there. When they graduated, at that time, Virginia was segregated. Black people were not supposed to go to that school.
Wow.
But being sent 3 students there, Bidishe, Musu, and another gentleman, 3 of them. And they lived with a man called James May. With them, and they went to school there and graduated, got their degree in theology or whatever it was, to be ordained. But their name did not appear on the alumni list from that time. In the 1850s.
Bias in the system.
Yes, until 100 years plus, until being left from here and opened the Payne Divinity School as a parallel theological seminary for blacks. It was a graduate from that Payne seminary, from Payne School.
Yeah.
The African graduates, the like of Bishop Harris, the like of Della H. Brown, people who graduated from there, who protested against that. And there's a book written on it by a man called Joseph Constant. No turning back. So long those 3 group fellows came here and graduated from the school, black will come to Virginia. And so recently, they merged Payne Divinity and Virginia Theological Seminary. And as a mark of respect, they named the library in his honor. So yes, there were difficulties, even there, as well as here. So can you imagine to walk from here to Happo? You went on a horse and you tie your horse on the beach near a town, and you enter the town, you come back to only meet the horse slaughtered and divided by the people. You know, they probably would have killed the man if they met him at the horse, but there's a story about that. So they were not easy, and they did very well. At that time, the territory here was divided between the so-called indigenous people and Cavalla River being the superhighway at the time. The missionary had to hide if they were travel between one side and the other for Cavalla canoe to pass through and go to Webo. They had to go in the night in canoe. So it was not easy.
All right.
They had places like there's a place called Yobloke.
Yes.
That was one of the stations there. A man called Morgan from here went there, and we have land there. I have a friend there now. He's a, I think he's a catechist, but he's a lay reader called Nyeswa.
Yes, Abbot Nisha.
Abbot Nyeswa. But that station was set up as a stopping point when going up the Cavalla River. You see. So yeah, there were difficulties, there were challenges, even here and around.
So I guess you wanted to say something a bit about this school.
Yes.
That's the reason why we.
Pastor Nyeswa, we started this school. We opened it as we opened this school particularly as a junior high because there's a public school here, which is an elementary school.
All right.
We did not want to compete
with them.
But the one thing that was lacking is the junior high. And the funding came happily over many years. But later on, when the donor tried to focus other places, the money would not keep the junior high open. But to keep a church school open until we can find money, if we can, we are running it here on the elementary level.
All right.
So here is our willing teacher. His name Lemuel Nyeswa. He's not a member of the church. Unfortunately, no member of the church will volunteer and work hard as he is doing to open this school up. But he has a class that you might want to pick in there.
Yes, I think.
Nyeswa, can we look at the student there? Human beings there, they are so quiet because
let's just look in one of the classes and there. Okay, so how you doing? Thank you so much. So you see your father, your uncle, you know, this is where he came from, so you can do the same, yeah? Thank you ever so much. So teacher, thank you.
Yeah, thank you also.
All right.
This is one of our teachers. She deals with the K1, K2.
All right.
All right.
So I think I give
your name.
Your name, ma?
I'm Bernice Sawi.
All right. Thank you for job well done. How you doing? All right. So this is which class is this? All right.
Now, so until we got difficulties with financing, this school operated a junior high. Some of the graduates are graduating this year from
Tubman University. Tubman University?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
People who graduated from here when we're running it as a junior high. The first person would have graduated last class, but for some reason he waited. This year, some will graduate.
Great.
And they're planning to do a retreat, come back home to see what can be done to bring this.
Probably to give back their services.
Yes, to give back services as well as try to see how we can get it at a junior high level.
Okay.
Now, because at a junior high level, right now, you need a college graduate, not just a high school graduate. We need a college graduate. And to retain and attract a bunch of names.
Yes.
To retain, to attract people costs for money. These people are volunteering. And so we agree that one day, they will come up at a junior high level.
Okay.
The student case low here is not sufficient to be able to pay for maintenance and attraction of qualified, trained, and committed
Instructors.
college
Yeah.
But we hope sometime we have a program. We have some income generation program that help at times. We're raising some animals.
Oh wow.
And so
As a church.
as a school,
Okay.
the school raises animals. The church during their big collection voluntarily who want to help the church put in some money, and sometimes the last quarter
Mhm.
we only receive less than 2,000 every week,
Wow.
which is not even, but it's, we appreciate it. So nobody is being forced to support it. People here don't see that. They say, oh, the school got animals, so you cannot drive a willing horse to death. Selling all the animals, eventually you got nothing. That's what happened. When it was junior high, the wage bill was so high
Mhm.
that we were giving animals to those teachers,
Mhm.
you know, to compensate them for their work. And we almost the teachers because of animals. So that has been the problem.
All right.
Now, talking about indigenous ministers,
Mhm.
this man whose grave is here
Mhm.
is Henry Dioh Messenger. He was the last person to work in the boarding school that were here.
So he served as
Priest in charge.
prison charge.
Yes. Yes.
Died in the law. Okay, the years now that's the year I was
year,
looking for. I think it's
1929.
19.
March 22, 1929.
Okay.
He died. Here in Cavalla.
Okay.
He was the last caretaker
All
of
right.
the boarding school. He was
Okay.
an indigenous priest.
I see.
Henry Bible Messenger. Yes,
So
great.
this I all.
I told you about a man called and the hard to read. We need to paint it.
Yeah.
But this grave belonged to a man whose stature looked like the grave. He was
Wow.
called Minor Lancelot B. Minor.
Mhm.
He was one of the first priests who came here in 1837.
I see.
We all came later.
So this one it means that
There was a grave there.
okay.
All these people, and sorry, not shining properly.
Yeah.
but
We understand that because of the time.
Yeah. Maybe some
Maintenance
flipping
also.
of other, but these people were scholars. This man from Nashville, Tennessee, he came here and died here. He came from the scene, from the Virginia Theological Seminary at Alexandria, the one I was telling you about.
Yeah.
He graduated in 1853.
Wow.
He came here, he worked here, and he died here 1855. That was another one. These are white people, Caucasian. This one is the one white bishop. The first bishop of the church was John Payne. But this is the grave of his wife.
Okay.
When they were coming, Payne has an interesting story to tell. When people did not want to come, there's a story that I got.
Anna and Payne.
Yes, Anna Payne. That was the wife of Bishop Payne.
All right.
When they got married and came, she came with him. She died here, then Payne got married again. But when they were coming, Payne prayed. He said, Lord, For many years, you let white people go to Africa and bring slaves. And they suffer the slaves. Sometimes some of them die. And you still let the white man live long. Hmm? Will you not allow me to live long because I'm carrying the gospel to the people? And that's why perhaps they did not die here. From 1837 to 1868, that's a long time. He went old. Spain was 21 years when he came here as a young man and his wife. But when he left, he was old now after that long time.
All right.
This is a grave belonging to somebody called the Hour. The name used to be Hour. I do not know whether it was a daughter or the wife of the man we call John Goblet Hour. John Goblet Hour was a German missionary. He had worked as a Lutheran in Gold Coast, and C.C. Hoffman found him there and encouraged him to come and join the Episcopal Church. He became a bishop also after Pain. So the other graves are local clergy. That's why one is the grave of Benjamin Ballantyne.
All right.
A grandson of P.K. Ballantyne, who graduated from here and was the first president of Cottington College.
Wow.
That his grandson, Benjamin Ballantyne, he served here at the church as a lay reader also. You see,
Okay.
these are all. I think that is his wife, Martha. Who is this? Huh? Okay, Martha. But who's between them? But we need to find it.
The
But these
writing
other
has
graves,
raised.
there was a man called Wisner. No Wisner. That man here, where is his grave? And Kradangu. All right. These two are Wisner. They were lay readers. As I told you, this burial site is meant for people who serve the church, not general congregation. Anybody die in the Episcopal church here will know. We are keeping it for that purpose.
Okay.
So that's how far it is. It's difficult. They have the lack of will politically, even at the church level. People will say the difficulties that the Episcopal church have gone through from here now to Cottington.
Yeah.
Yes, but this is the cradle from which they develop. And sometimes we speak disparagingly about its role. The missionaries here were accused of inciting the natives, not empowering. Missionaries here were at times accused of inciting the natives. Yes, when the people knew their own right and got an education, they could not allow you to mistreat them as you were. And so the fall of Maryland in 1856, 57, 59 is claimed to have been, this place was a hotbed of that subversion because we taught the people to know their right and further you could not use them the way you were using them, everybody. So, well, maybe this is why, the fall of Maryland was attributed to the education that the missionaries were giving the indigenous people from here.
So on the overall, what impact, whether positively or negatively, did the presence of missionary bring to the indigenous?
Oh my God. Immense impact. It's not the number of people, but when you survey or look at the listing of priests who have served here, many of them are indigenous people who got the beginning from the Episcopal Church. First of all, this church gave people like Harrison, not B.D. Harris, not B.D. Harris, but people like Gibson. There's a school in Maria called Gibson School. on the bypass. That man came to school here. People like Natasha Brandon, who was Anthony General, or some person in the Ministry of Justice or something like that, he came from here. People like C.G. Bryan, the first, who was Collector General of the Republic of Liberia for many years, and father of Charles Judy Bryan, the late, who became chairman. Those people were educated here. And it is that education that people wanted to associate with the ethnicity. So then they grow people, they know book. Well, but that was the impact. Remember, the former Francis Wanayua Marias went to school some part at Cottington. I stand corrected. He went first also to the Hague in Italy and wanted to be a priest, I was told. But when he completed the study and he wanted to ordain, but that was a man who, from our side, raised the story of the what they call the labor scandal of the 1920s. That people were selling human beings and sending them to Panama. And he, Marias, and Brandon took complaint to Geneva to the League of Nations that led to the establishment of the Christie Committee that investigated the labor scandal and formed the government of Liberia guilty of something that was indistinguishable from organized slavery.
Wow.
In which Vice President Yancey and another man called Ross were instrumental in collecting people and sending them from this territory to Pananapo for a little, about $25 per person. And the government was collecting money, $5 for export of that man. Some of them have never come back. But that brought the slave scandal, the labor scandal to a halt. If they had not been there, what would have happened? So bishops, priests have come out of that. That was very positive. Whether they were Moses from Egypt against Pharaoh, right? If Moses had not come up in Egypt, perhaps the Jew would never have been liberated. So the Egyptian, when I talked to them, they said, well, Moses was not a Jew. Several hundred years, his parents went there. Internationally, he was an Egyptian. But if you got one money and you go to People's Surrogate District in CRC and all the people there working from River G say we're going today, it will be a collapse of the business. And the government will have to take some side to either negotiate or pressurize them not to leave. That's why Moses grew were left. The people who were leaving Egypt, the Egyptian claimed they were not Jews. They were Egyptian. They were not Israelis, so to speak. As it was said, the word Jews was but they were considered as a working class of Egypt. So what I'm saying here is that that kind of thing that was going on with the labor scandal, somebody had to talk about it. And it put Liberia, even though in an embarrassing situation, a halted what I would consider something not different from slavery. You see?
Okay, so before we wrap it up for this edition, there are several persons you name who may have gotten their education from here and support. And some of them have traveled and they got their children who are still living. Are those children turning back to Cavalla, Maryland, or the Global Kingdom to say, let us contribute to the livelihood of the people there, particularly upholding to the dreams of our forefathers?
Well, it's individuals to decide. The fact that somebody is in the diaspora, for me, it has its positive. If I did not go to school, I went to school here until 1952. Before I left and stayed until 1962 in Harper, Then I left and went to Monrovia and went to school until 1970 before I graduated from the University of Liberia. If I had not gone that far, eh, I probably would not have come back to make any meaningful contribution. So the days of Moses to return to Pharaoh and bring his people back will come. People in diaspora, I have nothing to blame them. The day will come. But what we started with is those people have to be what we call brainwashed. Somebody said other us are brainwashed. But these people, you could not identify yourself with ethnicity in days back. And if you were in the government took those people who were indigenous educated people to beat up their ability to run a civilized government. And so when you're there and they give you job, you cannot come back here and say, oh, you saw the road coming to Cavalla. Then they will say that you inciting the people say the road not good. So they never will come here to sleep. People here, they get them vehicles for what they call agriculture break. They hardly come back because when you come here and see the bad condition and talking about it, you'll be inciting the people in the exam. So yeah, the day will come. What for you will see your face. But what I believe, we have to use what we have to get what we want. And nothing for us without us. We can't stay there and depend on government alone.
I like that.
Rush?
Nothing for us
Yes.
without us.
Nothing for us without us.
Yes.
As a blind man in Monrovia says that. He's the president of the Blind Association. Nothing for us without us. But I'm saying use what we have, what you have, to get what you want. You understand me?
Yeah.
So we're looking up to somebody's gift and trying to envy it and thinking that's the only reason by which development will not come here without a developed person. So those who are what, who are away and have been developed, should cultivate the passion of coming back, to bring their light to the forest where they come from. Like you know the cannibal fire. Cannibal fire will bring its light to the forest. But God will go to the light. People are going to be civilized and they have yet to be civilized. They just see lighting happen. They want to be in the city. They just been civilized. They're living. Civilization is a progressive development. You understand?
Yeah.
You have to go there and be a part of that progress. Don't go because the guy light in Harper and you live in Harper, you don't have light in your house. You're walking the street, there's light. You can't bring the light home. The light will not come here when you are not here. So don't say no light in Cavalla, so are not coming. You understand? I don't want to make a sarcastic statement.
Okay.
That people come to my house, say my house is have like oven. Yes, come and let cool it. Huh? If you think you belong to my house and they have like oven, bring your resources so we can put air condition in it. Yeah? But it will not be there until you put it there. Nothing for us without us. And each person will have to create the Liberia we are looking for in his own immediate environment.
Yeah.
And not to say because everybody, the fish in the sea is salty. But yet you take a shark or boning. Even if you don't wash it, you roast it, you need salt. It's impermeable by the evil that is in that salt. So you there, you can come here and make a difference. Not everybody here will be a drunker, a witchcraft, and a lazy man, and a dirty man. Come with your eyes open and try to inspire development in what I would call an evolutionary manner. The evolution says it's a progressive development. It doesn't mean to say overnight monkey will turn to human being. It will never. But progressively come and develop the place you want to see. Nobody will develop it for you. They can be there. I'm not inviting anybody to come. Then you come bring the dirty water here, you die. They say, oh, you go, you die. I've been here since 1971. Associated when I left school, I have 5 job opening in Monrovia. I said, yes, I didn't come to look for a job. I will go back to Maryland. I came to Maryland in 1971. And I've been around here all that time. So people need to come home. I'm not inviting them, so they come and get national and drink it, and something happen, they say the man he carry. But think twice. Think, prepare himself for coming here, and that's how he's lived on here. Clean your mind up and come here and know why you are here and stick to it. Don't expect too much too soon. It will take some long time before we can develop this country. Liberians have a way of comparing themselves to other countries. It's not good. Liberia is the youngest habitable territory in West Africa. Up to 1450, nobody was here before the day Angola came. But by 1070, Ghana was booming as an empire. You want to compare yourself with Ghanaian? You are a young country, a conglomeration of different set of people. It will take some time. Let's be patient with it.
Okay, we cannot say it all today. I
No,
believe there
not
will be a
really.
time that
Yeah.
we'll meet and say other ones, particularly on the establishment of Maryland County, maybe. But is there anything finally you want to tell us before leaving?
I want to say thank you for coming here. You saw the road you came on.
Yeah.
In itself, it's a hindrance to people coming here. But you have cleared all the bush away, gotten down on the motorbike to push you and come. This, I hope, will open up somewhere in a dark spot to say, truly, is this Liberia also? Because if you are on the 18 in Harper or on Broad Street in Monrovia, that is Liberia. No, it's not true. And all of the development in those developed cities have their beginning in a rural area, such as Cavalla and a peaceful church here. So come, we need your help. But you got to decide when you want to come. If you think your village is not developed, don't expect others to come and develop it. Nothing for you without you here.
So maybe somebody wants to know just a little about yourself.
Well,
You can just conclude it.
I'm Henry Woart, Henry Dioh Woart, in short. But my global name is Dioh. I was born here in this community, meaning Cavalla here, because there are 5 different towns: Jamestown, East Cavalla, Lulu, Newtown, and the Kingstown. But that is the Cavalla community. I was born here. My mom and father are from here. I know 7, 8 of my great grandparents, but my great grandparents hail from Tuzon in Grand Jere. In 1699, they were part of the people who migrated here. And I know the names up to this present, how they link. I went to school here in 1948. I started in the same church.
How old were you?
48, I was about 6 years old. I'm now 80.
Wow.
So I went to school here until I got to what in Royal Reading we used to call infant reader. So in 1952, I went to Harper, but they took me to Harper. And I went to school there. Parish Day School, I went there. Then later on, our later apartment, I completed 8th grade there. Then I went to Monrovia and completed the high school at what used to be the Laboratory High, which is now Tottenham High. So I graduated in 1965 from that high school, and 66 I entered college. 1970 I graduated with a Bachelor of Science degree in agriculture. My focus is in rubber production, which I unfortunately don't like. But that is the only place I could find a job that could bring me look near home. But and I've worked since 1971 until 2005. I worked with rubber companies, including what is now Sam Davy, but it was B.F. Burish, then it became Godfrey. Then I joined the humanitarian service with Lutheran World Federation World Service. And for 12 years, I worked for them. And when I turned 65, I told them I have to go home. I didn't want to be hunting behind job and die at job. I got to go home. So this was a challenge. Maybe tomorrow somebody will say, Henry did it, I could do it. I'm not a pioneer. There were men like be there, be there, who came here and started a school and ran a school, government school. There were people like Philip Tabla Mason who came here and were running the mission school. There were men like Hirobode Brandler. People have come and come. Pierre Blanc, Pierre, those were educated people who were in the diaspora but decided to come home. So I'm not bragging as the only one, but I'm one of them. And so we can come. So since 2005, I resigned active employment. And then the government uh, started working with the church to reorganize what we call the um, Episcopal Relief and Development. Was coordinator for this section for some time. But then 2005, 6, 7, 8, I resigned that. And then did a documentary as you are here that led to the development and reopening of Tottenham College as Tottenham University. It's a movies or documentary you call Africa's Maryland. Africa's Maryland focuses on something like what I'm telling you. And that was because Teba Newell, who was then superintendent, went to the state of Maryland to say we had a state in Liberia called Maryland, and now war has devastated everything. Can you help? The people there said, we do not know that there was another state from here called Maryland. So we sent people. They sent a man called Tim Tutum and John Sanders from Baltimore. And they came here and did that documentary, which proved to the Maryland state government that yes, there was indeed a state in Africa called Maryland. And they and Liberia in the diaspora, the people like James Collins in Minnesota, I think, Dr. Elliot, those people went behind the founding foundation, fundraising group to establish, but it came from a documentary like what you are doing. So I'm hopeful that somebody haven't heard this might be enthused or pushed to do something about it. And we got to expect it to have it. I'm not doubtful that something good will come from this. I can't say people being coming. Yeah, they will come. But without this, nobody will know about that. Thank you for coming.
Thank you all so
So
much.
that's what I am. And I decided when you're getting old, be near your grave. So your casket will not be heavy. My father died here in 1978. And that his grave in my yard. We tend to lay by him. So that's why I'm here.
And currently you are providing services at the William F. Tubman University.
Yes, because it came out of that documentary. Because the information that I got that led to the opening included this graveyard, included this church. Oh, how did you people get this? It was written in our data, the global language. There's a language called global, which had literacy. Yes. So some people in the committee that organized that if that global literacy helped us to get the story we wanted, then we got to continue the global literacy at the university. It wasn't people around here say we won't teach global. It was the effort the global made in opening the university that encouraged the people to commit themselves that in any way, whether it's just fundamental because it's just like primary. Those children that finish, you say, come be minister. No. 2 semesters of global for people who don't speak in it, it's not sufficient to create the kind of proficiency that we would expect. But at least the knowledge is there that there is a literacy program with the global.
And you were doing same at state radio.
Yes, there was a time when I was in school, in high school, in fact, I was with the ELBC as the vernacular broadcaster, giving news. And then went to college and I had my own newspaper in global and English in collaboration with the Pisco. And then when the Pisco found that out, prior to that, they used to send people from Liberia to go to America and tutor the Pisco before they come to Liberia. But unfortunately, when they came to Monrovia, the man who they taught global would be sent to Nima. So America decided, Peace Corps program decided, when we have assigned the people, then we will, you know, we teach them the global. So in the 68, before that, there was a man called Wallace, Samuel, either Wallace. There was a man called Francis Wilson. They went to Baltimore, not Baltimore, Boston, and taught Peace Corps there. But when the Peace Corps realized that the people they taught global were now working in other places, they decided, and in 1968, I brought 17 Peace Corps volunteers and worked with the Peace Corps to teach them global. And in 6 weeks, basically oral, not literal, not a literacy, just to speak it. They could go to the market and, and, and do their shopping. So yeah, that was it.
Thank you all so much, Mr. Woart, for the time.
You're welcome.
So that's it right here. This is 2A Radio TV, and this is how we bring this segment of broadcast here in Grand Cavalla, one of the oldest town, I believe, in Maryland County, which we have come to get a history of, including the Episcopal Church of Liberia, particularly the Epiphany Episcopal Church located here in Cavalla. My name is Langston Joe Wilson. Thanks for watching. Share our video and like our page.